Have you ever walked into a room hoping everyone would look at you and smile, but instead they just stared at you in silence? Have you ever tried to wear a costume to look like a hero, but everyone knew it was just pretend? Imagine being one of the most famous women in the world. You travel to the most beautiful city, Paris. You put on a fancy dress. You smile for the cameras. You want the world to think you are a queen, but behind the scenes, people are whispering. They aren't saying nice things. They are sharing secrets that would make anyone blush. This isn't a fairy tale about a princess who lived happily ever after. This is a story about what happens when the cameras stop flashing and the truth comes out. It is a story about a trip to Paris that was supposed to be a victory but turned into a disaster. We need to talk about what really happened in the shadows of the fashion world. We need to talk about the secrets that the magazines didn't print. Grab a snack and sit down, because the story I am about to tell you is full of awkward moments, strange choices, and whispers that turned into shouts. This is the real story of Meghan Markle in Paris, and trust me, it is not what you saw on the news. Listen closely, because I am going to tell you what really went down in the city of Paris. Everyone in the world thought this was going to be Meghan Markle's huge moment. It was supposed to be her big return to the spotlight. The plan was for her to say, "I am back and you have to look at me." She wanted to show everyone that she was still important and stylish. She went to the Balenciaga fashion show, which is a very big deal. She sat in the front row where all the most important people sit. The cameras were flashing bright lights everywhere. Click, click, click. It looked like a movie star moment. It was supposed to be iconic. It was supposed to be a moment people would remember forever. But inside that building, the feeling was very different. It wasn't happy. It wasn't exciting. The vibe inside that room was dead silent. One person who helps dress famous people whispered about it later. They said you could feel the air freeze when she walked in. Imagine opening a freezer door and feeling that cold blast of air. That is what it felt like when she entered the room. There were no warm smiles. There were no friendly hugs. Nobody jumped up and said, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing." It was just quiet. People's eyes followed her as she walked to her seat, but they were judging her. They were looking at her with cold eyes. You would think that a duchess showing up at Fashion Week would cause a huge scene. You would expect the paparazzi to be screaming her name with excitement. You would think the magazine editors would be fighting each other just to get a selfie with her. But the answer is no, that did not happen. She walked down that carpet with her chin held high. She was acting like she owned the whole city. She tried to look confident, but not a single important person stepped forward to say hello. People actually kept their distance. They literally stayed far away from her. Nobody wanted to be the person caught talking too close to her. The photographers took their pictures because that is their job, but you could tell even they were bored. They weren't excited. It was awkward, it was painfully awkward, and behind all that awkward silence, there were whispers. The whispers were fast, quiet, and mean. This was because the people on the inside already knew something that the rest of the world did not know yet. Now here is where the story gets really messy. The crew who works backstage started telling stories to each other, and guys, the gossip was very hot. They said that standing near her was not easy. It wasn't because she was mean or rude, it was because she smelled. Yes, you heard me correctly. I know it sounds crazy, but multiple people swore it was the same thing. They talked about her breath. They talked about her body odor. They said it was bad. One person described it in a very specific way. They called it a mix of cheap perfume and stress. Imagine sweating because you are nervous and then trying to cover it up with too much spray. That is not a good combination. Another person said, you could tell the glam team was panicking. The glam team are the people who do hair and makeup. They were spraying everything they could to fix the air. Apparently, Meghan kept pulling her scarf closer to her face. She was smiling like nothing was wrong, but the makeup artist looked very tired. Someone even made a joke about it. They said, you can fix foundation on a face, but you cannot fix that smell. It sounds very cruel to say that. It sounds mean. But you have to understand that this is how gossip spreads in those fancy circles. It moves fast. It is quiet. It shows no mercy. By the end of the night, the rumor had already traveled all the way to the lobby. People were not talking about the beautiful Balenciaga clothes. They weren't talking about the fashion designs. They were whispering about her and the smell. That is the thing about Paris. It is a tough city. It forgives arrogance. It forgives scandal, but it never forgives bad hygiene. After the Paris show was over, the talk inside the fashion houses grew louder. Designers started whispering that Meghan's look was not a special gift. They said it was a last-minute favor, not a grand invitation. Balenciaga is the brand she chose for her return, but they hadn't rolled out the red carpet for her. In fact, the rumors say they only gave her one pair of shoes. They were simple black heels. The rest of the outfit was borrowed. It was not gifted. Let me explain why this matters. When you are a huge celebrity, brands usually give you clothes for free. They want you to keep them. But for Meghan, the clothes didn't fit perfectly. That is because they were never hers to keep. There was no tailoring. Tailoring is when someone sews the clothes to fit your body perfectly. There were no custom adjustments. There was no personal touch. In the fashion world, that sends a very quiet message. It says, you are not part of our circle. For big celebrities, getting free clothes is a sign of status. It is a sign that the fashion house believes you are valuable to their name. But for Meghan, there were conditions. She had to return everything. The tags were still attached to the clothes. Now, this is where the story stops being just awkward. This is where it starts getting a little bit creepy. When people in Paris said Meghan took a little drive through the tunnel, they didn't mean she was just stuck in traffic. They meant that tunnel, the Pont de l'Alma. This is the same place where Princess Diana's life ended in a car crash many years ago. At first, people thought it was just a coincidence. A coincidence is when two things happen at the same time by accident. Then, her own team claimed she didn't know that was where Diana died. But the people who knew her well didn't believe that. They knew she had an obsession with Diana. Insiders whispered that she had filmed herself there on purpose. They said she wanted to walk the same path to create the same feelings. She wanted to blur the line between herself and the woman who once held the world's love. It is the kind of act that makes you question everything. You don't just question her choices, you question her mind. How could a woman be so educated? She is very smart about the media. How could she not know the history of that tunnel? Her closest friend once said they used to watch Diana's funeral over and over again on TV. She had studied that story. She knew every detail. So how could she not know? The answer is simple. She did know, and that makes it much worse. And then there is the hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is when you say you believe one thing, but you do the opposite. When Meghan first stepped into the royal spotlight, she called the press cruel. She said they were dangerous and obsessed. She said the British media destroyed Diana. She said that she and Harry were the next targets. But behind the cameras, another truth waited quietly. The same woman who blamed the British press for using tragedy to make money was now sitting down with CBS. CBS is the American TV network that bought and showed the photos of Princess Diana dying in her car. Yes, the very same network. Those pictures weren't just the work of British tabloids. They were for American network profit. CBS paid money for them. They aired them on TV. They used Diana's final moments to get more people to watch their channel. And who gave them exclusive interviews decades later? Meghan and Harry. It is a detail that few people talk about, but it changes everything. While the world was sad about Diana, CBS turned her death into a headline. While Harry cried for his mother, that same network sold the image of her pain. And years later, he returned holding hands with the woman who is now using Diana's memory to build her own brand. It is more than irony. It is hypocrisy, and Paris saw it all. From the moment she left the royal family, Meghan tried to rebrand herself. Rebranding means trying to change how people see you. She wanted to be seen as something new. She wanted to be a global humanitarian. She wanted to be a CEO. She wanted to be a symbol of independence. But those who worked with her said it was all just on the surface. Her speeches were written by other people. Her business ideas were vague and recycled, meaning they weren't new ideas. Her staff called her demanding but said she had no direction. And while she told the world she wanted privacy, she couldn't stop calling the cameras. Every move she made seemed designed to mirror someone else. She tried to copy Diana's compassion. She tried to copy the Queen's poise. She tried to copy Hollywood's glamour. But in chasing everyone else's reflection, she lost her own. The same woman who said she didn't know where Diana died watched that funeral again and again. The same woman who said she never Googled Harry had planned her introduction to him with precision. The cracks in the story were showing. This time, no public relations team could fill them in. The Paris show was supposed to be her rebirth. Instead, it became her mirror. People saw through the performance. They saw the forced smiles. They saw the desperate symbolism. They saw the empty glamour. The same woman who once captivated the world now looked like a shadow of her own illusion. Reporters began to ask questions they once avoided. Why did no major designer want to dress her? Why did no global brand sign her after Spotify and Netflix cooled off? And why, after all the healing, did Harry look more lost than ever? The answers whispered through Paris like a cold wind. It was because the story wasn't real anymore. The charm had faded away. People were beginning to see the truth. Meghan Markle was no longer a mystery. She was a headline that had already been written too many times, and this time, no interview could rewrite it. By the time she left Paris, the lights were still flashing, but the warmth was gone. The applause was polite, not passionate, and behind her the whispers were louder than the cheers. The city that once adored Diana had no space left for imitation. Imitation means trying to be like someone else. Paris doesn't reward pretending, it exposes it, and that week it exposed Meghan completely. The world finally saw what insiders had been saying for years. They saw that the glamour, the grace, and the carefully staged image were just that, a stage. Behind the luxury clothes and camera smiles was someone empty, bitter, and tired of pretending. Maybe she thought Paris would crown her again. Instead, it stripped away the costume. By the end of it all, Meghan wasn't glowing under the lights. she was standing in their glare. The difference between her and Diana was never just about love, it was about truth, and in Paris the truth finally caught up to her. Paris gave her what she wanted, she got attention, but she did not get admiration. The lights flashed, the cameras clicked, and for a moment she thought she'd become Diana's reflection. But Diana's light came from love, Meghan's light came from performance. Those who saw her up close, the stylists, the assistants, the staff, said the truth out loud. It wasn't royalty they were watching. It was imitation. The tunnel wasn't a symbol. It was a warning. It was a warning because Paris doesn't reward pretenders. It exposes them. And when the lights faded, there was no applause. There was just silence. She came to be remembered, and she will be. But she won't be remembered for grace. She won't be remembered for kindness. She will be remembered for the moment when the act ended and the truth finally took the stage.